When you first got the call, your blood froze, and you almost dropped your phone. On it was a coworker of yours, one of the engineers. What happened was that overnight, your place of work, the Fazbear Entertainment Mega Pizzaplex, had been set on fire. First responders had done their best to fight the flames. Your first thought was your job. What now? Do we rebuild it? Higher-ups haven't made a decision yet. Is there anything salvageable? Probably. How much stuff is actually destroyed? I don't know. Then your mind drifted. I'm just calling all human employees just to let them know. You're the third one I call. Brian is next. Was the only thing you could muster. But before they hung up, you shouted, "Wait!" A horrifying thought came to you. What about Vanessa? The guy was quiet for a moment. Is she okay? Wasn't she on shift tonight? Kevin? Kevin, is she okay? The man sighed. Honestly, I haven't thought of that myself yet. Are you serious? You shouted, mostly to try to hide the fact that you just remembered her yourself. Look, there's a lot of shit going on, alright? I'll keep you and the others updated. Got it? You sighed. Yeah, got it. 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks until you were called again by Kevin. In the meantime, you had visited the ruins of the Pizzaplex. Of course, only seeing it from a distance behind the police tape. The structure seemed to be doing fine. And you had met up with Brian and some of your other co-workers. A hot topic being the cause of the fire and Vanessa's disappearance. Charlotte, the receptionist, had already gone to her apartment and came up with nothing, so the current theory was hospital. Despite the automation of the Pizzaplex, there were still a handful of human employees after all. But that was what attracted you to it. Since there were only about 10 to 20 real people working at the Pizzaplex, it was more like a extended family rather than corporate rivalries. And when Kevin called you again, he had something akin to good news. Alright, I got good news and bad news, then more good news, and then more bad news. What do you want to hear first? You just gulped and went silent. And eventually he just spoke up. Good news is, you still got your job. Good news is, you can come to work tomorrow. Bad news? Well, the time off will be deducted from your pay. Are you serious? That's not it, get this. They found some really creepy shit in the basement. So, that is under investigation. You went quiet. And after a minute of silence, Kevin continued. The big guys want you to come tomorrow to your shift and do some maintenance on the surviving animatronics. Wait, they're still functional? Somewhat. They just want you to go back up their AI and copy that onto new endos, give those a shell, and that's it really. The man chuckled. Normally that would be my job, but I'm under investigation myself because, well, my security clearance technically allows me to get into the basement, and that's where the fire started and where all the creepy shit was. I have no fucking idea what they mean with creepy shit. You get the point. Jeez, I never even realized we had a fucking basement. He was clearly upset. Before you two ended your call, he added, also only like 40% of Pizzaplex is actually lost, thank fuck. 40% still sounded like a lot. Brian's currently on both day shift and night shift. Probably hasn't seen his home in 2 days. Wait, so does he sleep over there? Set up an air mattress in parts and services. One of the few places spared by the flames, so send the guy home when you get there, got it? You nodded. Okay, good. Oh, one more thing. You gulped. The man sounded grave. They found... Kevin paused. Should he really tell you about Vanessa? Ah, never mind, scratch that. I'll tell you later when I know more details. You furrowed your brows, sighing. Fine then. After you said your goodbyes, you spent the rest of the day preparing. And tomorrow evening, you just put on your uniform and left your apartment. "15 minutes later, you arrived at the ruined building. The police tape was gone, and outside were a few abandoned construction vehicles. It was late, so the workers had left for the day. The pizza place looked eerie from the inside. Burned walls, broken glass, loose wires. The floor was wet, drenching your shoes and pants. At least the water didn't soak through. What was strange, though, was the effect the scenery had on you after you turned on your flashlight. Somehow everything seemed more creepy with it. But that was probably just because you saw more of the destruction. Next, you entered the maintenance tunnels through a stairwell in the lobby. Just like Kevin said. This area seemed to be the least affected by the flames. Sure, the walls and floors were covered in soot, and you could only see about 5 meters ahead of you thanks to the floating ash in the air. Just in case you pulled your shirt over your nose as you made your way through the labyrinth. It was uncomfortably warm down here, as if somewhere there was still beckoning embers. However, the moist crunch on your feet indicated that this place had also been properly put underwater by the firefighters. Mostly through memory alone, you made it to parts and services. As you inserted your keys into the metal door, you could see through the door's window that this place really had been saved from the disaster. Slowly you entered. It was quiet. The air hot and dry, probably due to the non-functioning vents. You looked around. In one corner you could see broken shells of Chica and Roxanne. In the other stood a big mattress. On it, the sleeping Brian. Next to it were 3 boxes, 2 of which were open. They read spare parts. A symbol under the text indicated each animatronic. The still closed one being Monty's. You snuck further into parts and services, not wanting to wake up the man just yet. This place had always creeped you out a bit. However, now that it was the only place that seemed familiar, it was comforting. You leaned over a corner, and your eyes met with an active endoskeleton. You shrieked and jumped back. The machine stood still, just curiously turned its head from left to right. After catching your breath, you heard a groaning from the mattress. Looking over, you noticed your co-worker was still asleep. Finally, you sighed and walked over to him. "Brian?" No reply. "Brian?" You asked a little louder. The man didn't react verbally, just rolled on his stomach and let out a long snore. You narrowed your eyes. "Brian Chesterfield Crawford!" You growled like an angry mother, and instantly the man was awake. I'm up, he muttered, lifting himself up, only to then grunt and fall back. 5 more minutes, Ma." "Brian, it's time for your shift to end. Go home and stuff." The man rolled on his back, looking at you with tired eyes. Bruh, I had the most vivid dream. You furrowed your brows. What do you mean? He shrugged. There was this kid fighting a bunny zombie guy? Pretty cool. You sighed. Okay, well, I'll take over now. Kevin said I should repair the animatronics. I don't know how, though. Brian scratched his nose. Nah, I took care of Roxy and Chica. Don't worry about that. You only gotta fix Monty. Uh-huh. Oh, also, don't worry about the attendant and music man. In fact, it's the DJ's fault the bots are still functional at all. The big lad just grabbed all of them and hid them inside one of the service tunnels. Since his shell is made out of some alloy crap, he only needs a fresh coat of paint. Ain't that neat? Your eyes widened. It is. I didn't realize the animatronics were programmed to save themselves like that. Brian shrugged. They are programmed to protect company property. But you know what that means. Huh? That means the bots got banged up the way that they are before the pizza place burned down. Anyways. All of them are currently in the atrium sharing the only functional charging station. Just call over Monty at the maintenance panel. You put a hand on your chin. Interesting. Do you think Vanessa had something to do with that? Brian forced a smile. He was the one who found the burned remains, after all. And he really didn't want to think about it. I have no fucking clue. Trusting Kevin's judgment in not telling you on this. We will find her. Don't worry. You smiled. Do the bots know anything? The man shook his head. It's weird. According to them, they've been offline for over a month, despite being fully functional the entire time. My guess is someone deleted their memory or restored an older backup. Maybe it was Vanessa, he quietly added. Brian soon left, leaving you alone in the grimy parts and services room. Going over to the maintenance panel, you called over Monty Gator, not realizing the sorry state he was in. A feeling of guilt was already overcoming you when you heard the noise of scratching metal on cracked floor. Biting your lower lip, you approached Monty's tunnel and opened the door, only to be greeted by the shattered Monty crawling towards you. Oh God, Monty, stop! You ordered, and the machine ceased all movement. The robot's eyes were focused on the wall next to you, as if he was ashamed.
It looks terrible, I know,
he said. You had seen the broken shells of Roxy and Chica. They really went through a lot, but this was a step above. How did the others react to this? You pointed at the loose hanging wires.
Chica's upset I'm last, as the two could at least still walk around, but I can't, obviously.
You ran towards him. He was still pretty big, despite his damage. Leaning down, you took a deep breath and lifted him. You groaned in pain, but ever the brave security guard, you would push through this. If Brian could carry the heavy daycare attendant, you could lift a half-pint gator.
This really isn't necessary,
shouted the gator angrily. I can't let you crawl like that, you heaved.
This isn't consensual.
Stop being a baby and let me help you! Your shout echoed through the tunnel, making the gator realize that maybe he should shut up for now. On wobbly legs, you slowly carried the broken piece of Fazbear property into parts and services. before throwing him onto the operation table. Exhausted, you took a few steps back and allowed yourself to fall on Brian's mattress. Meanwhile, Monty lifted himself up so he could look through the glass of the protective dome towards you.
You could have just let me crawl, idiot. Night guard.
Shut up, you wheezed. Monty crossed his shell-stripped arms, mumbling quiet curses, not wanting to admit that he genuinely appreciated your help.
Why are you doing this anyways? This place went to shit.
You raised one hand in defense. It's called insurance, you dumb lizard. You sat up, fighting within yourself if it was really worth it standing up.
What are you even supposed to do? It's all gone. Just replace me.
You narrowed your eyes. Kevin told me the server room is unusable. And yes, we could order new AI units, but why do that if we can just take yours out and put it in a new endo? Monty's eyes widened.
A brain transplant?
He shouted in surprise. Yeah, all customer data is in your head and we really don't want to reinstall everything into a new brain. You gestured to your left. I mean, we could spend 2 hours backing you up and putting you into a new endo, or you motioned to the right. Spend 8 hours and inconvenience customers and make everything new from the ground up. Monty lied back down on the table.
That's a relief. Unlike the others, I'm more than a little damaged. Heck, Chica only needed a new shell and voice box. And look at me.
You sighed sadly. You had seen it. You felt bad for him. In your training manual was written that due to the animatronic's advanced AI, they could simulate emotions almost perfectly, all by a little wooden in times, and warned that the robots were still robots. That it was a waste of time and money to show them empathy. But after working at the Mega Pizzaplex for so long, the robots were just as much family as the other employees. On top of that, Monty had always been your favorite. First things first, you deactivated the animatronic using the maintenance panel, upon which you entered the protective dome. His shell was so broken and dislocated you were afraid the automated arms of the dome would damage his insides further. Using a screwdriver and a wrench, you carefully broke the shell of Monty's head in pieces until you had access to the side of his head, where you unscrewed a small panel. Hands shaking, you carefully removed a tiny green ship. You held it like a precious artifact. This small thing was Monty. Biting your lower lip, you looked around. A devious thought had come to you. After making sure nobody was looking, you sighed, and then hugged the small piece of electronics. Knowing you shouldn't muddy the chip, you had made sure no skin was touching the sensitive parts. You breathed calmly. I'm sorry this is happening to you, you whispered, like you were talking to a child. But I will put you back together. I promise. Quickly you left the dome and placed Monty's chip on the maintenance panel monitor, before walking towards the stored endoskeletons. The one that had scared you earlier sadly was a Roxy model, so you needed to dig a little further. You found a few scrapped ones, and a really old one that seemingly was just wires. Probably an older model from an older location. Dare you say, maybe even a sister location. No, these really wouldn't do. You are considering going into the deeper parts of the maintenance tunnels to maybe find a suitable Monty endo that wasn't too damaged by the fire. But then you found it. It was deactivated and covered in dust. There had to be a reason as to why this Monty Endo had been sent to the scrapper. You ordered the Roxy Endo to carry the Monty Endo into the light so you could inspect it. And afterwards, you used a program from a functional maintenance tablet to run a diagnostic. It seemed as if this Endo's problem was with the internal voice box. You shrugged. Good enough. Normally you would order a staff bot to bring you a new voice box, but that was out of the question. Regardless of that, you ordered the Roxy skeleton to strap the old Endo into the protective dome, and then send it back into the dark corners of parts and services. You still needed a new voice box. How the hell would you even attach it? Your attention returned to the broken Monty parts. It was just lying on the ground next to the table. You seem to be scarily talented at scavenging, or at least that's what you like to believe, as you broke off more pieces of Monty's shell in an attempt to locate his voice box. And after some tinkering and breaking off several pieces, you were not only drenched in sweat from the exertion, but also you located the internal voice box of the old animatronic. Intimidated, you looked at the intricate pieces. "Well, no time like the present," you whispered, intimidated. With shaking hands, you fiddled with the thing. A disgusting cracking noise made you shiver. No. Did you just break it?" Your heart rate increased tenfold. You weren't trained for this. Why were you of all people tasked with this? You wanted to cry. And you kept at it, determined to at least see if it still worked. And eventually, the box clicked. You tumbled backwards from the force, but you did it. You removed the internal voice box. Triumphant, you held it up. Then you got on your feet and set the voice box on the surgery desk. It took you over an hour, removing the old voice box and then reattaching a new one. Many times you considered punching the wall out of frustration. And when your hand slipped up, tearing the skin of your hand to the point of heavy bleeding, which you fixed with some hand sanitizer and a bandage from the first aid station, you were ready to give up. But then, it was finally time to reinsert Monty into his new skeleton. The chip inserted easy as butter. Just in case, you returned to the maintenance panel and activated Monty's head. "Monty, are you, alive?" you asked. The empty eye sockets of the animatronic Endo moved, a sign of life.
"I can't see,"
he complained. "You are naked. Not even eyes."
Ugh. That's embarrassing.
You chuckled. "You don't have anything down there that you could be embarrassed about."
"I don't care, stop looking."
You chuckled, amused, before turning him off again. "Okay, one last time. I promise," you said. And one last time you left the protective dome, and using the novelty Freddy Fazbear crowbar Brian had left behind, you opened Monty's box of parts. The moment you looked at the amount of shell pieces, well, you wanted to leave. Send in your 2 weeks' notice and hope you can find a new job. But instead, you took the dumb option. And by the time you were attaching his chest and head plates, the sun was already rising. How the hell did Brian finish 2 of them? Oh yeah, he practically spent 2 days in here. Christ. At least the bigger pieces like chest and head could be safely attached using the arms of the protective dome, running their automated reparation runtime. You checked your watch. 6 a.m. Tired, covered in sweat, ready to give up honestly, you finally typed out the reactivation command of Monty. The robot opened his new eyes and stared at the dome's ceiling.
Okay, I'm not connected to the internet, so I have no idea what time it is.
You sighed. Impatiently, you growled. Just make a system check, okay? Monty raised his body off the table.
What? You sound like Brian.
Please. Monty blinked. After a minute, he spoke up.
System check complete.
What? Do you feel weird? Do I need to turn you off again? Do I need to remove your shell?
No. I'm fine. Don't worry.
He jumped off the desk with a loud clonk.
I feel fantastic. Like fresh out of the factory. The only problem is... you.
You took a step back. What do you mean?
You look horrible.
Looking down at yourself, you sighed in pain. Your body was covered in oil, dust, sweat, and blood from your hand. Then most definitely was infected, and you would definitely need to go to a doctor with that. After a long shower, of course. Well, I did it, you sighed. I almost quit. Twice, I admit. But I did it. You stretched, cracking the bones of your back in a satisfying way. Meanwhile, Monty left the dome and looked down at you.
You did great, Night Guard.
He put a hand on your shoulder. The hand you just had carefully put on him. Feeling its weight and its fully functional state on you filled you with a feeling of pride. Monty's eyes met yours as he looked you up and down.
Normally Freddy says these kinds of things to the little guys, but whatever. I am proud of you.
He sounded like this confession took him a lot of processing power. Honestly, you just were glad that outside of the music box his endo was completely fine. You really lucked out there. What happened next, however, you didn't expect. He went down on one knee to be on level with you, yet you still just barely reached his chin. And then the animatronic wrapped his arms around you. You inhaled slowly as his gentle hug intensified.
I'm sure this had taken hours.
Yeah, my entire shift, in fact. Why are you doing this?
I'm not good at showing affection. In fact, if you tell anyone about this, I will deny it.
Weakly, you just answered with a quiet, sure. You melted into his touch, wrapping yourself against his hard shell, ignoring any discomfort it gave you. As a gesture in of itself meant so much to you, to him. You blushed hard, quietly wishing he'd kiss you. Anxiously, you looked up at him. You made a noise, and his eyes looked down at you. You sighed. Can I kiss you? Monty tilted his head skeptically.
I'm a robot.
So? I just spent like 8 hours fixing you! You almost shouted. I just want some comfort, please. You were tired. So tired.
Fine.
Monty lowered his head, allowing you to get closer. Your lips touched his cool plastic. After you had been in this hot room for so long, it felt like you were pressing your lips against the bottle of an ice-cold drink during summer. Monty heard you groan in pleasure. Without moving his mouth, he commented,
You don't have to make such noises, Nightguard. You're making it awkward.
But you didn't care about his protest. It's so wonderful felt his cooled shell pressed against your body that you really couldn't care less. When you woke up today, you definitely did not expect you'd be making out with an animatronic. However, this didn't mean you couldn't enjoy every second of it. Especially since none of the cameras in the ruins of the Pizzaplex were functional. So you could take your time. All the time you wanted. With the gator.